to HR Bytes, a podcast and video series to bring you stories of HR professionals who bring a think globally and act locally digital HR agenda to their work. Everyday people who are driving digital transformations in their organizations, data-driven and future-fit digital HR leaders. You can listen to us on all your favorite podcast channels and watch us on YouTube as well. Do follow us on social. And this is your host, Jay Polaki. Today's guest is the wonderful Stela Lupushor. Welcome to HR Bytes, Stela. I'm delighted to share your insights with the HR Bytes community today.
Hi, Jay. Thrilled to be here, and thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Stela, you are one of those thought leaders who's written a couple of books about the HR tech space and how we need to keep the human touch while we implement and revolutionize the HR function using leveraging technology. Could you tell us a little bit about your work and how you got started in this space?
Absolutely. This is the space I was educated for, right? I come from a math and computer science. At that time, it was still, very basic technology that evolved over time. And I ended up in HR by chance of luck. And I really found myself because I saw how the work I'm doing from technology perspective can impact me personally as a worker. And my career pivot happened right there. I was really drawn to not only looking through the technology lens and what you can implement, but how can you change the processes? How can you reimagine the service delivery model? How can you rethink the strategy in order to bring that experience that brings the talent out of everyone? I think a lot of times we think about performance and people's ability to be good workers through just the number they get at the end of the year, as opposed to saying, what is the context where they work? How can we reduce the friction and minimize the challenges they run into in the process of doing their work? And as a result, unleash their potential, unleash their talent, and help them be their best at work. I've been in the corporate world for most of my career at the intersection of HR and technology and analytics, since that was also part of the work. And over the past 6-7 years now, I love the corporate world. I went more into a portfolio career. So I do consult, and for the most part, the consulting work is focused on the same analytics, technology, and human-centered design. I also advise a lot of startups because I see so much innovation happening in the space of HR tech, in the space of work tech, and I can impart not only my experience, but also how large enterprises deploy or choose even some of these technologies and things for them to incorporate either into their product or into a go-to-market messaging or whatever will help them maximize their likelihood of growing as a company and as a product. I also teach. I believe in giving back to the next generation and developing the minds of tomorrow. And I teach the same thing that I consult on. The class, it's called Digital Workplace Design. So it's really bringing that design thinking, technology and analytics insights to the world of work in order to change the workplace experience, not HR processes, workplace experience. So that's a more of a different way of looking at the world of HR.
Wonderful. Well, that's a great intro to our discussion today. Our topic of conversation is all about leveraging technology and analytics and data, which is kind of the new oil when it comes to organizational success, and of course, work experience design. So, you and I met at the HR Technology Conference just this past week, and all of this was front and center, right? There were more than 500 service providers, vendors in the expo hall. And I believe there were more than 5,000 attendees, close to 10,000 maybe. I'm not really sure about the numbers, but it was a huge, huge conference. And AI was front and center of every technology provider, right? How do you think we should be approaching building AI into the HR function? HR leaders today definitely need to prepare our function for the increased use of AI in our work because it's everywhere. We are surrounded by this. But how do you think we should approach building AI into the HR function?
So let's start with HR tech. It was the first time for me too, and absolutely overwhelming size and skill. And you're right. Everybody says they're building AI solution, and it feels like the early stages of analytics when all the vendors were saying we're building analytics, fill in the blank. And I think it's one of those early where are the early stages of this space, and people will call AI, a basic regression model, and to some degree they have some correctness, but the opportunity space, I think, from HR perspective, is tremendous. When we think about the even up until this year, before the generative AI and all these large language models that kind of became commonplace and everybody jumped on the bandwagon, there was a lot of innovation happening in HR technologies stacks. We had a lot more data to analyze. We were able to make better linkages to the business outcomes and make predictions about attrition, about best potential for the company, best fit. So there was already a lot of utilization that allowed us to learn along the way, that also shaped some of the regulatory direction for HR in general when it comes to these technologies. We know that whether technology is introducing bias, whether the model is introducing bias or the data that was used to train the model is introducing bias, regardless of where the source is, the company that is using it has the responsibility to audit itself and make sure that there is no discrimination for certain segments. The company and the development teams and the implementation teams have to know what questions to ask in order to make sure that you have the right approach. And more importantly, I think companies are starting to realize that you really need to include more voices in the projects. So you can then have somebody say, hey, what about the segment I represent? How will that work for me? The better and the more inclusive you are part of the design process to represent different voices, the more likely your solution is going to be less risky in general for us to approach. And I think that approach is part of human-centered design as well, right? You have a participatory design, you bring people together, you don't wait until you deploy, you really bounce it off the real world, and then you improve as you go. And with this advanced models, I think you have to do that because you do not know what you don't know. You do not know all the possible ways things could go wrong. You do not know what type of data you may encounter tomorrow. So having a feedback loop and a way to have representative sample of all the possible risky areas or segments that you need to account for or edge cases will really develop a better solution in the long term.
Wonderful. And, leadership is now asking every team to do more with less, given the economic climate and the world at war in
Literally.
literally, right? It's horrible. So in such a scenario, the adoption of technology by HR teams for all aspects of our function is kind of a necessity. It's inevitable because we really need to leverage tech to do our work better and be more efficient, more productive. How should we consider using AI, given all of these challenges and pitfalls that AI does bring, but there are also potential benefits of using AI. And I really think that there is a way to use AI in our HR function today for the betterment of our workplace and our work world. But how do we consider using AI to completely shift the way we work versus just this band-aid approach, like a, fast approach where you use AI, like all these service providers now say, hey, there's AI in our platform, right? Without actually going deeper into potential, utilizing the potential of AI to its utmost. What do you think about this? How should we, be completely shifting the way we work using AI versus just, this temporary approach to use AI to do something fast in the short term?
There are a couple of aspects to this, so maybe more than a couple. First of all, we look at the HR technology through the HR process lens. We will create the better mousetrap for sourcing talent, for managing the funnel, for creating employee records, managing payroll, benefits. People don't spend more than maybe 5% of their time in the HR world, and if they can minimize that, they will. They spend their time at work doing the work. And HR has very little control over those tools. They do have some influence over the relationship between team members and peers and managers, but they only influence. They don't control. Manager is going to do what manager is going to be rewarded or punished for, really, at the core of it. So how can HR be accountable for the employee experience if they really have very little control, right? They can only influence. But HR has the ability to bring together all the parties that needed to make better decisions and say, instead of us in HR worrying about compensation, because compensation is a problem, and therefore we're going to go choose another technology to help us do a better compensation plan, maybe we should look at what it's like to be an employee from the moment they're hired, at what level they've been hired, what compensation level they've gotten, how has their performance changed over time? Is there a pattern in that team that we see everybody being lower paid than the average? Did they not get promoted in time, or they got promoted too soon and they weren't ready? How the trajectory of the compensation growth for them evolved over time compared to other segments? Then you have a very different story. You're not solving HR problems, you're solving workforce problems. And it's not just compensation, it's everything, right? When we come to work, how many tools do you have to interact with? How many apps that you forget the password, that then you have to deal with IT, who, all the frictions that we have to deal with just because everybody solves for their own segment and island, as opposed to looking through the lens of the worker. And the problem we have, and in general, most of the organizations, we look through the lens of some other stakeholders, right? It could be customer, and therefore we're going to solve all the problems for the customers at whatever expense when it comes to employees' experience. Or we'll solve for the shareholders or whoever cares about the cost management. So we'll minimize the cost and therefore not invest in infrastructure, not invest in the right type of tools and the right type of experience. So all of this is to say that it's time to bring the worker to the forefront too. I think we see a lot of labor movement and unions popping up in all sorts of industries that we weren't expecting. Some of them were expecting, but in some of them, like Apple people, Netflix, right? There are new types of pushback that is starting to come against these draconian decisions that really take employees to the lowest priority level when it comes to investments, when it comes to improvements. And my biggest question is, like, if I as an employee do not know what a good experience feels like, how can I deliver that to my customers? So now, from HR perspective, from technology perspective, from analytics perspective, we have so much more data. Now we can string this story together and say, let's look at all of these experiences along the way. Let's look at all the friction points that people experience in at the workplace. Let's link it to business outcomes that we care about, and let's build a story. Are we really hiring the right type of people in order to deliver this type of customer satisfaction? Are we training them? Are we integrating them into the company culture? Are we giving them the tools they need to be able to do that? And not, what is the cost of losing that customer? Now you're standing on a very different, footing in terms of, like, would you rather save 5%, but you'll lose so many accounts just because they don't get the experience they're expecting from you? Or is it okay to invest in that extra $20 a week in order to be able to bring this person to a living wage and give them take that worry off their mind, so they can focus on doing what they're expected to do?
You speak about this in your book.
Yeah.
You have this book called Humans at Work. I think it's titled, and it's somewhere, not here on my desk, but it's it's on my other desk. I've been reading it, and you talk about this 4+3 Ws framework.
Yeah.
It's the worker and the work, and you differentiate between the 4 Ws and the 3 Ws. So what you just said is very resonates with me a lot, because it's so essential to keep that worker and work differentiator in perspective when designing the workplace experiences of today. And you're so right about the all the stuff that we're seeing that's coming out of the woodwork at us today. There's so much out there, not just with pushback from unionized workplaces, but just pushback from remote workers, pushback from folks who want to be in the office, pushback from folks who don't want to be in the office. So this is a huge new era for us in the workplace. And when it comes to AI, bringing back the focus to AI and the ethics of AI,
Yep.
in the midst of all this, there are a couple of laws that came out. New York City, where you're located, had that local law 144 that went into effect on July 5th this year. And then we have several, I think there's one in Chicago, some in California, and the EEOC also had a technical guideline release in May of this year. And apparently, even the Vatican is getting in on the AI craze. They released a handbook on the ethics of artificial intelligence as defined by the Pope. So, everyone seems to be a part of this conversation, wants to be a part of this conversation, and I think is crucial to this conversation to have everyone involved. But how do you think we in HR should think about building the guardrails for the ethical use of AI in our organizations and beyond?
Obviously, we have to really pay attention to all of these legal, ever-evolving legal space. The other consideration for HR practitioners is to be educated, right? We really need to understand and play with it. Reading an article is not going to make you understand the implications and ramifications. And the interesting part is a lot of people expect a training course to be out there, or to go sign up for some sort of a degree. All of that is helpful, but the space is evolving so fast that majority of the content is in some Discord server or in some Slack channel, and it's in people's heads. So you really need to have an omni-channel approach to ingesting information so you can understand what exactly it is that you're dealing with. And more importantly is to have opposing opinions, or try to listen to the full spectrum of perspectives, because that's where you'll find the nuggets based on which you'll understand how complex the space is. The internal guardrails, as you described them, they will always be a moving target, right? Because before large language models appeared, there was a certain point of view and there were certain assumptions on how technology works and what are the potential risks and downsides. With large language models, that's all bets are off. Yeah, there's still some of the same principles apply, but now you have a very different quality of questions that are emerging, right? if I use ChatGPT to build my reports, what does it mean in terms of my work and what I'm responsible for? If I'm a consultant and I charge per hour, now I'm able to save half, I don't know, maybe more of my time in order to produce that deliverable. What do I charge? I still deliver the same type of value, but it's a different amount of time and investment. So the definition of what is the work that gets done and what is the value that gets attributed to that work is changing too. If you as an individual have a data set and the system can allow you to analyze it in the matter of seconds, that usually would take you, I don't know, a day, but you uploaded the data into this public space and you're infringing possibly lots of data sharing um, limits. Who's responsible, right? So a lot of the challenges and questions that are starting to emerge, you really need to have this as a ever-evolving body of do's and don'ts and common sense and things that are no, definitely because they are by law forbidden, versus things that we can talk about and maybe there was a mistake, but we learn from it and we have a public debate to raise it up as opposed to hiding it and then for litigation reasons or for disciplinary reasons, for whatever, and then not being able to benefit from that lesson learned to spread that knowledge across the rest of the organization. So I feel like there is a space and place for this transparency inside the company to discuss, debate, and have different opposing opinions. And HR is perfectly situated in the middle of facilitating that conversation. But you really need to have the right language and the right type of questions that you can ask to prompt people to give you the answers.
Wonderful. And on that note, what's your advice for HR professionals who are looking to adopt or adapt to new technology, especially AI?
Start using it. There are paid versions, but I keep telling people, like, I have 4 employees. I have Bard, Bing, Claude, and ChatGPT. So Bard is Google's large language model. Bing is Microsoft's. Claude is Anthropic's, and ChatGPT is the OpenAI. So use it. I couldn't comprehend. Well, I was reading a lot of materials. I was reading a lot of articles. I would listen to podcasts. I was trying to kind of stay in the in tune with what was developing. But until I started using it, it wasn't clicking. So the best way to learn about it is use it and be curious and make it as a challenge to yourself. Like, can I find a way that is not going to be able to do good work? Can I bid it, right? So to me, it's like, oh, let me ask in a more complex way, or let me ask a very different question. Let me throw different problems at it and see what it does. And it's still impressing me every single time.
Absolutely. I mean, I love playing around with those prompts. Apparently it's the prompt engineers that are going to rule the world. So we'll see about that. But in your opinion, lastly, what are the technology challenges for HR leaders in 2024 and beyond, given all this newfangled tech that we have right now?
I think it's going to be less about technology itself, one particular one. It's going to be a lot about integration. We see all of these incredible solutions coming up and they're evolving really fast, but most of them are point solutions, or they have such a complex integrated stack that it's really difficult to navigate around it, and implementation wise and putting the pipes in the back end, it's very complicated. So it's having that modularity concept, that as well as really, really good integration capabilities, is probably where the answer is going to come from. Because you have all of this data that lives in all sorts of platforms, and you have all of these vendors that you need to manage contracts with. You have all of these design patterns that do not match across different solutions. So it creates even more complexity for the employees as opposed to creating a better experience. So sometimes less is more, and sometimes is really taking a step back and looking at that experience and journey is what's going to give you the right type of answer. But solving for the integration probably will be the biggest problem for decades to come.
Wonderful. Well, that brings us to the funner part of our conversation today, our question connection, where our audience and community get to know you a little bit more. So I'm going to have a set of rapid fire questions ready.
All right.
Who is one person you've gained in your network in the past year in the HR tech space that you think we should all connect with?
I would say, and although it wasn't connection in the last year, it was probably during the pandemic, Stacia Garr. So Red Research. I'm a big fan of a lot of the work they do, of the quality of the research they do, of the depth of thinking. So anyone interested to stay on top of all the technology evolution, that's probably the best source to go get educated.
Wonderful. And we'll link that connection in the show notes for the audience. What's your favorite HR podcast or a book that's related to our HR tech space?
I would claim the ignorance that I'm not following a lot of HR tech podcasts. I've run and I've met at the HR tech conference the Chad and Cheese pair.
Yes.
And I was really impressed, and I started listening to a few of their episodes, and it's a really good content, and it's fun way of telling complex stories. So that may be at least the first one I'm listening to.
Sure, yeah. I got Joel Cheeseman to chime in on our HR Bytes recording at the conference. It was fun to get him in the hot seat, right? They are funny.
They are funny. So yeah, that could be probably the one I would suggest.
Okay. Do you have any recommendations for LinkedIn Learning or e-learning series or webinars related to HR tech or HR that we could share with our audience and community?
Again, I will not give you an answer because I don't have any, because the content I'm intrigued about and studying and learning doesn't exist yet.
What is that? Curious.
A lot of the generative AI related content, right?
Yeah.
It's in Discord servers. It's in obscure technical podcasts that it's not a course yet that you can go take. So to me, go to unusual places, go to archive website to read papers, because that's where really the latest and greatest research is published. It's not converted yet. There is an opportunity for you, Jay, maybe to build one.
I want to go into learning and development, but I'll think about it. So given the upheaval of all things work and workplace and worker, what is one workplace trend that you think is here to stay?
Hybrid.
All right. And Stela, you give back to the community and the HR community in myriad ways. How do you enjoy giving back? Is there a specific organization that we can give a shout out to here, or a community that you think we should all be a part of?
Coming into this conversation, I had one idea, but I'm going to go with another one. I'll still say it. So giving back, I think it's everyone who knows some, or it's an expert in specific space, has to teach others, because you may be 5 minutes ahead of somebody else, but they will greatly benefit from that 5 minutes ahead of you. So whatever you can share, and for me, teaching is really fulfilling and satisfying experience, because I learn from the students just as much as they learn in a class. Another answer I want to give is the community, the importance of community support and bringing the community together. So the organization that I co-founded a while back with Jeremy Shapiro, which is a analytics meetup. It's a public group on meetup.com. It's called NY Strategic HR Analytics Meetup. It's
Okay.
nothing more sophisticated than that. But it's grown over years into a really thriving group of practitioners who care about analytics, who develop solutions, who want to hire from this community, who want to bring their talent to other companies. So before the pandemic, of course, it was all in person. Through the pandemic, we moved to virtual. Now we have our first event on November 1st in New York City that we're resuscitating the in-person gatherings. And we are going to talk about impact of generative AI on HR, on analytics, on skills, on regulatory evolution. So to me, those are the best learning destinations for anyone who is interested in the space, but also wants to meet other people, because magic happens during the networking when people grab a drink, when they serendipitously talk about something that eventually becomes a project or a new career or, who knows, maybe a new relationship.
Yeah, no, absolutely true. Thank you so much. We'll also share that in the show notes so people can find you and maybe come to one of your meetups in New York City. So thank you, Stela, for being here today. I really appreciate your time. If our community would like to get in touch with you, what is the best way for them to reach you?
Find me on LinkedIn, and you can email me at stela@reframe.work. Stela was one L.
Wonderful. Thank you again, Stela. And I am looking forward to bringing more such HR tech stories to the community. Have a wonderful day and rest of the month. And we'll see you next month. Thank you again.
Thank you.